Yeah, I can see. Shashank. Hi, Shashank. How are you doing? I'm just start the recording. Right. Yeah. How are you doing? How Shashank?
Hey,
How are you doing? Are you okay? All things good on Saturday morning?
yeah, like super awesome. Really appreciate this opportunity, guys.
Yeah.
So, is it good? Should I start?
Yeah. I just introduce you first thing, so
Okay.
that like
Yeah.
yeah, so at least we got guys. Shashank is working in the organization. He's work in Microsoft also, right? Yeah, 10 years. I can say 10 years. Right? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So and he has working as a principal consultant, right, at this point of time, right? So I think he's working on something a very cool thing today. He was sharing with us about the MCP uh, technology and how we can integrate, right? So maybe the stage is all yours, Shashank. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you, gentlemen. So, let me start sharing my screen. Hope it is full screen.
Yeah.
Minimize. All right. Thanks everyone for joining this call. And at the outset, let me thank the PowerAIthon organizers to allow me to share my work. Okay. Uh, so you know today we are going to explore the possibilities of converting your existing REST API workloads into a fully functional MCP server. Okay. Now let's see why is this critical, because so I'm assuming the audience here knows about what an MCP server is. So this was announced by Anthropic sometime around 2024 November, and ever since I think this has become the de facto standard for your LLM integration. So every now and then you will hear the tech companies announcing their MCP servers. Okay, and if you have done any work around AI, then I'm pretty sure you must have come across this term MCP. Okay, so MCP server is what we are going to build today. Okay, on the same side, I'm pretty sure the audience here also knows about what's an APIM is. But just for a quick recap, APIM is Azure API Management, which is a product from Microsoft Azure. It is heavily used in scenarios like microservice designs and front doors and forward proxies, rate limiting, multiple authentications on one endpoint. Um, it's basically a powerhouse of the entire API management product suite. You see, so so what? So these two together, they really form a very sort of a formidable duo, because let me tell you this: if you want to create an MCP server on your own, then you have to really know a lot of things. You need to know the like to begin with, you must know the Python language. So you must know the fast MCP servers Python library. Then you need to host it either in an Azure container, or you need to host it in an app service. Then you need to then worry about the app service scaling, governance, and all of those aspects, versus using APIM to do two things. You can either convert your existing REST API. So for example, you might have, let's say, function apps, okay, or the logic apps, or the Kubernetes containers based apps, WSDL, Open API specification, or any API, communicable over HTTP for that matter, all could be converted into first class MCP servers using this new feature that I'm going to talk about. Okay. Little bit about me. I'm currently working as a principal architect in Curve Digital UK. Okay, my main focus has been Power Platform Dynamics, and now it's all the old work coupled with the AI now. Okay, I previously worked for roughly 12 years in Microsoft as a senior consultant. I have roughly around 18 years of experience. I live in Hyderabad. When I'm not doing job, I'm a professional. I used to do professional powerlifting and bodybuilding until I started doing AI IT, and until I broke my back doing a 200 kg squats. Okay, so that's a little bit about me. So today's, what's the next slide? So today's scenario. Okay, so today what I'm going to show you is basically, you know what? Let me jump straight into the code. All right. Okay, so you can see my screen. My Visual Studio is open. This is a function app. Okay, this is a function app written in C sharp. Okay, what this is doing is it's offering three contracts, basically three operations. You can search contact by email, then you can create a contact, and then you can create an opportunities for those contacts. Okay, now this is, so if you work in a standard IT company, you might have, you invariably are going to have like some Azure workload. So you might have a dev team who are very strong and capable of building scalable Azure functions and HTTP workloads using any of these technologies. But now after this demo, you will be able to leverage those dev skill set and still be able to convert those into like an LLM callable entity. So you are going to have two flavors of the same API. One which is callable by LLM because they become MCP server. One is the standard API consumption, which is using Postman or the rest, general HTTP that you can communicate with. Okay. So little bit about this function. Okay, this is also a little interesting. So you will notice that we are using managed identity here. So neither in this function app nor anywhere outside of the function app we are storing any kind of passwords. Okay, so basically this function app is deployed in Azure. We have turned on the managed identity. That managed identity gives us an Entra ID app, and then we import that Entra ID app as an application user in Dynamics CRM, and then this all set up in the backend. So I will quickly head over to my browser, and then so you see this is my function app. Okay, data was MCP. I have turned on the identity, so that gives me the object ID, and then let me put this down here. And if I go to my Dynamics, you can see I have imported the Dataverse MCP, which is an application user. Okay, and if I go to the enterprise application, I can see that I have an enterprise application with the same application ID. So let's go back. So if you see, this is the E87, the managed identity, and this is the object ID, and corresponding to this object ID, we have an application ID which has been imported as an application user. So this is how this all has been set up. There is no user ID, password, client ID, client secret, blah, blah, anywhere stored, nor there is any Azure key vault management overhead here. It's all set up in the background, and it uses the identity framework. Okay, so that's the function app setup. Okay, so now let's quickly test this. Okay, so I have this little PowerShell, okay, which is calling my hosted function app. So I will turn this on and I will say dot scripts, and I click this. Fingers crossed. So we got George Anderson created. So I go to CRM. Let's look at the contact created today. So we have George Anderson ready. Okay. Come on, Dynamics. Okay. So George Anderson as a contact. So now let's recap. So we have a function app, standard HTTP, nothing fancy. It's all working in fine. Okay. We have tested this. So now let's let me close this. Okay. So now let me go to the APIM instance. Okay. So I have created this APIM instance here under developer SKU. Okay, so if you want to experiment with APIM, you can do that very well without any additional cost with using by using like a developer SKU. Okay, it obviously it doesn't give you all the features and the scalability and all, but you can test everything. So on the left hand side, you can see you have workspaces to API and this little MCP server thing that we are going to take a look very soon. Okay, and then you can also create backends if you want to do, if you want to act the, if you want to have your APIM act as the front door with a public IP. So that all can be done by a backend. So all this is available with the developer SQ without any additional charge. You can do this. Okay. So we have the function app ready. Let's now bring that function app first inside the APIM instance and create an API. Okay. So what's an API? So basically for inside what lives inside an APIM is an API package. One API can have multiple API like operations, and then that way you can import multiple APIs, and each of those APIs can basically have their own policy configurations and authentication setup and all of that. So you see, I have 4 already listed here. The one that we are going to build using the function app is also present here, but I will tell you how do we import this. So you click on add an API, you go, and then you have this laundry list of options which are available for you to import. You can import from OpenAPI. Why do I speak OpenAPI? OpenAPI, WSDL, OData, and then the standard app service function app, container app, and logic app. So you can create an API from all these options. Okay. Was there a hand raised? Sorry.
Mistake. I just turned on. Yeah.
Oh no, sure, sir.
I think
All right, so I
was
will
just reacting to your OpenAI versus API thing.
What because he got excited about the OpenAI, then
yeah, whenever I say open API, all of a sudden that P is omitting. I don't know for it's like AI. All right, so let's.
Yeah, it happens to many people. Yeah, thanks. It's quite common. Yeah. You can proceed, please.
So we have already, so I have already, so on this bottom left side, not bottom, but somewhere in the middle on the left side, you see this sales MCP API. I've already done this. So the way you do this is by so in our case, we clicked on the function app blade for those who missed. So this opens this box, then I click on browse, and then I click on select, and then it shows all the function apps which are available. And then I choose my MCP app, and then I import it, and that's how this one is created. Okay. So let me quickly go to this API, MCP API part. So if I come back to my Visual Studio, you can see we had 1, 2, 3 operations. Okay, not create request. This is a general. So we had 3 operations: search contact by email, create a contact, create an opportunity. But in the APIM API, we have 4. And the simple reason is that the search contact by email is available, as a get as well as a post. So where is search email? So if I open the signature for this, you can see this as here. So this has get as well as post. So that's why 2 operations for 1 contract, and that's how we have create contact, create opportunity, post, and then these 2 as get and post. Okay, so this is now having its own URL. Okay, we basically have to you can either call that function app directly, but that's not the purpose here. Now you get your own. So if you go to test, you will get you should get a URL. So yeah, so you get this new URL. So you submit your JSON payload on /context. In that way also you can create, but that's not what we are trying to do here, because we have already seen the function app is working. Okay, so so if I go to the design blade, okay, and if I click on this little front end, it opens this this little screen that you see here for create contact with further details. Okay, and one of the main ones that I want to highlight is the description, because if you have, I'm pretty sure everyone here has worked with AI and LLM, and they already know how critical the instructions are, the prompting is. Okay, So whether it is system instructions or user instructions, they are very critical. Okay, so you see I have described this create contact operation in detail. Okay, so I have given it a summary, and this is a JSON, mind you. I mean, this is, I have not tried to use any natural language here. This is a JSON, because LLMs do understand JSON, better than us. So it has a summary, it has a description in detail, and then it has a request body with its own description, and then it has the responses also, that what happens when you get a success response versus what happens when you get a failure response. Okay, now there is a bug here. Okay, so if you can, so this text box of description that you see here is practically limitless, as in you can punch in as many characters as you want, 1,000, 10,000, 20,000, it's all available. But when you import this API into MCP server, which is what we are going to do next, that is where it breaks, because the MCP server part is only expecting a description of max 10K. Yes, not 1K. It's 10, sorry, 1K. Okay, it's only expecting a the max length of 1,000 characters. So, and the error is also not very intuitive. All right, so it takes a little brain bashing to understand what's going wrong. But then once you figure out, it's very simple. You use an LLM to draft a JSON description for your operations and then submit. So likewise, you can see I have created a description for all of them. Okay, so if I open front end, it has a opportunity description, search contact by email and all. So that's how. So again, a recap: we built a function app. It's hosted with the managed identity. We can call it over HTTP and create contact in Dataverse. So that loop is complete. Now we imported that same function app in our APIM instance and created an API out of it. So now you have like two different URLs to address the same operations. Now let's move towards the direction of the AI world. So that is where MCP servers come into picture. And again, I want to remind that this is, in my opinion, pretty revolutionary, because like I said, if you want to, you can basically create MCP servers in practically all the programming languages. You can create in C#, but then you need to know the function app platforms and the app settings for function app. You can build it in logic app, but then you need to work with a little bit of Costo query customization. You need to do a little bit IP routing and things like that. But this I found the most clean way. Okay, because you can create function app in like PowerShell also. So regardless of what your tech team capability is behind the scenes, you can ask them to create some HTTP workload, and this feature will instantly convert that into an MCP server. This is not ordinary. This is like mind blowing. Besides, APIM is a sort of a 10-year-old, decade-old product. So this has been used in I don't know, I'm pretty sure everyone here, whoever has worked with enterprise customer, must have used APIM in some fashion. Okay. So learning APIM is critical. Learning to build MCP is even more critical, and learning these two together, I think, is a learning full circle. I will say, for lack of a better sentence. So okay, so now when I open this MCP servers blade, you can see I have two options here to create an MCP server. So either I can import an existing server as an MCP server. Many people might think, well, why should we do this? Because maybe you want to enforce your organization policies. You want the endpoints behind the virtual network, and like I said, APIM is not API specific. It's like a complete infrastructure management system, if you will. Okay, so you can either expose an existing MCP server as an MCP server, or expose an API as an MCP server, and that's what we are going to do. Okay, so I have already done this. I will open this and show this in some time, but if I click on this, that's what you get. So it is asking you what API you want to import as an MCP server. Okay, so we have already created the sales MCP API. I choose that. So once you create your own API, that that option will start appearing in this drop down. You can select that. Once you select that, it will start listing all the operations available, and this is the like little like very handy useful thing. So if you do not want to, so let's say you have like 10 contracts or 10 operations behind your server. Okay, you want to only expose, let's say, 5 to your LLM. So this is the place where you do that, because if I can just do this and this, I don't want to do a get, and I can easily do that just by selecting the operation which I want to expose as an MCP tools. Okay, so you select your API, you select your operations, give it a friendly display name, friendly name, little bit of description, and well, so this product part is sort of optional, but product is let's say you want to offer your customers like a gold standard API access versus bronze versus silver and all of that. So this is the place where you do that. Okay. And once you do this, that's all done. Okay. So you click on create and it creates your MCP server. So this is my MCP server. As you can see, all the heavy lifting and infrastructure backend setup and all that plumbing is already available. Okay. I have an MCP/MCP endpoint. So if you have worked with MCP servers, I think um, you will know that, you see, MCP server comes in two flavors. Okay, one is an HTTP MCP server, which is this, and the other one is like your local STDIO, like the pipe. Like those who have worked with Unix, they will know what the pipes are. But like pipe based communication is very fast, but only local machines. So this gives you /MCP HTTP endpoint, and even in HTTP there are two versions. One is the legacy HTTP over SSE, and the latest one, which is streamable HTTP, which is this one. Okay, so streamable means you must have seen how the chat bot respond, right? They like stream, so every character is getting written like real time. So that needs an HTTP, sorry, streamable HTTP. So that's what this gives you. So long story short, this is like the latest and greatest infrastructure that you get through APIM, and this is now available. Okay, if you look at the tools, so all the tools that we had on the API are like first class citizens of this API instance. They are all imported. And this is the bug that I was talking about. If you have it even one character more than 1000, it's going to break. Okay. Now, you see, this place also gives you an opportunity where, you can select how many MCP tools you want to. So the previous screen that we saw was like to select which API operations you want to select. But this screen gives you another, like the next level of it, where you can, choose which which MCP tool operations are available. So we don't want this get one. Okay, so we exclude this. So now we have 1, 2, and 3 MCP server tools available on our MCP server. Okay. Those who have worked with MCP will also, sorry, those who have worked with APIM will also be aware that it has, like you can apply policies and do like amazing work. So you can apply inbound policies for what happens when somebody is trying to reach your APIM versus how do you modify the request before it is sent using outbound, and what happens when there. So all this XML policy configuration, it can go really like 10,000 lines, and you can really do a lot of configuration on the policies. Okay. So once again, quick recap: we built our function app, MCP server, managed identity enabled. We saw it's working. Then we imported that. So we created an APIM instance. We created an API. We imported our function app as an API. Then we created an MCP server, and that's where we are. Our MCP server is ready. Now let me talk about the authentication part. So obviously, if you work on the if you work with a customer like an enterprise customer, they are not going to accept this kind of open endpoints. I don't think I need to talk about you need to have secure MCP servers, or rather secure servers, whether they are MCP or standard HTTP. But like I said, the beauty of APIM is that regardless of what underlying product you are trying to sort of manage, okay, whether you are trying to manage um, a standard API or an XML API or a gRPC endpoint or an MCP server, this policy document controls all of them. So even if you have your in-house expertise who know how to configure policies and all, they will just do it for the endpoint, and then your MCP server will all of a sudden be protected. Okay, you have first class authentication options available. You can do API, like a API key based authentication, OAuth 2.0. You can do certificate based authentication. You can do anything with APIM when it comes to authentication. Okay, now this endpoint per se is unprotected for demo purpose, but probably I can share my slide deck with you afterwards, and then I have written 2 detailed documentation how you can do the authentication with the API key based and the OAuth 2.0 client credentials grant. Okay, so you can do all of that. So now we have our MCP server sort of ready. Okay, now it's time to consume this. Okay, so I go to my Copilot Studio. Okay, now I have the sales MCP agent. Okay, and so you see the beauty of this, right? We are able to accomplish like so many things, like search the contact by email, create a contact, create an opportunity, and then a lot more, because right now we have just 3 operations, but imagine you had like 20. But all you can accomplish, all of this you can accomplish by just 3 lines of system instruction, because we have not bloated this part, which is what I don't like. We have not bloated this part. A lot of the instructions which are given to our LLM already are defined on the API side. So once the agent understands the MCP server contract, it will already know everything of it. You don't need to again rewrite that. Okay, if you want to create a contact, then pass this first name as string and blah blah and all of that. Okay, so all that we have as part of an instruction is that you are a sales agent which can search contact, create opportunities. You need to always use the MCP server given to you, and anything else is politely denied. Okay. We have used Claude Sonnet, but that's not needed. I don't know why did I select that. You can do GPT 4.1 as well. Okay. Now, if I go to tools here, you can see this is where I have added my MCP server as a tool for this agent. The way you do this is you click on add a tool, you click on model context protocol, and then you give your server name, you describe it, and then uh, you copy this MCP URL and you come here and you paste it. Okay. Authentication, your 3 options, none, API key, or 2.0. I will not create because the MCP server is already created, but this endpoint is unprotected, so I'll choose none. But otherwise, you can choose an API key and then further describe whether this is a header based authentication or query based authentication, versus OAuth 2.0, where you need to like give in the full details of like client ID, client secret, and everything. Okay, but I can share my deck. I have written like sort of detailed article on how to do OAuth 2.0 for the MCP servers, custom MCP servers. Okay, so I'll leave this screen. Uh, now, if you look at the MCP server configuration, the only configuration we have done is to use the maker provided credentials. And so there is nothing like right or wrong about this, because now this will not ask for any authentication. It will use the authentication which the user creates at the time of adding the MCP server as a tool. So if you are using a chat based, if your agent is basically a chatbot, then I think you can let the users authenticate. But if you are planning to use the agent as a backend smart agent, then you can use the maker process. It's very similar to like how we do app user authentication in Dataverse, right? Those who are Dataverse professionals here. They will know what I'm talking about. So you have two options here: end user, which is the default one, versus maker credential, which is what I've selected. Now, if you see, this is duly imported all the entire JSON payload, and it understands the contract. Okay, it knows everything because the summary tells what the summary is. The description tells the further details, and the whole responses and failure details are also captured. So I don't need to again uh, pollute the instruction set again with the same thing over and over in my instruction box. That's all I'm going to say, that you must always use the MCP server. All right. So that's how we set it up. Now we'll test this. So for a test prompt, I will create a test, like a prompt as in this created by a non-tech person. So create two fictitious contacts, one male, one female, male of Chinese origin, female of Russian origin, then create individual opportunity. So I copy this. Okay, I paste this. Okay, and it's time to go. Fingers crossed. Let's see what it does. So it has invoked the MCP server. Okay, it is trying to understand all the contracts, and now it knows what I need to do, and then it will call two. It will make two calls to create contact, and two calls, fingers crossed, to create opportunity. Oops, did it not do? Yeah, it did. You see, it scares you when you're doing a live demo. Whew. Okay, so let's see. So it has created Zhang Wei as our first contact, and Natasha Ivanova as the Russian female. Okay, so let's look at the summary. So this is our contact. These are our two contacts, and these are the two opportunities created, and it's well summarized here. Now the beauty. I'm pretty sure a lot of people have already seen this, but what fascinates me most is that it created this contact. It has the GUID of the contact, right? It remembers this when it creates an opportunity. It knows that I need to, plug in this contact ID for the opportunity that I'm going to create for, like, Zhang, versus which one I have to create for Ivanova. Okay. And then if I would say you need to create 10 contacts and 10 opportunities, it would go on and create 10 blocks of create contact and blocks of create opportunity. So let's see if that has worked. So if I do create contact today, refresh. George Anderson. Okay, so we have Natasha Ivanova and Wei. These two contacts are created. And let's see the opportunities. So let me open my view. And there your opportunities are. So you see, now you have the same API. Okay, I did not write a single line of code, but I created a fully functional enterprise grade MCP server straight out of like a few few clicks on the API. Okay, you can, because because ultimately MCP server is what, if you think about it, just an HTTP endpoint, right, uh, with this new protocol, but ultimately it's an HTTP endpoint. So now all the configuration that were previously applicable to any other HTTP endpoint, like rate limiting and Azure front door access and forward proxies, and then putting it through virtual net by subnetting your API, means all those are available. You don't have to do anything, because that whole thing is done at a separate layer, not at the MCP layer. Versus when you create something on your own using Python or C#, you have to worry about all of that. So I think that's what has been sort of really fascinating for me, that okay, now I can use my company's existing dev resources, but still we can offer like MCP and AI capabilities in Copilot Studio and other clients. So with that, I will probably take a pause to understand if anybody has a question. Otherwise, I think we are little early today, and I think that's fine. So I'll stop sharing. How do I stop sharing?
There's one question in the chat, Shank.
Okay.
So
What's
that
that?
is how security can be handled based on user context. If person who doesn't have create access or contact gives a prompt, will it create contact?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a separate layer, I will say, right? So then probably, so this is not a chat bot, okay, but you have to worry about this scenario in a chat bot scenario that your users are authenticating. And then based on the users who is in the authorization context, when that user issues the call to Dataverse, they are appropriately impersonated. This is more sort of a backend one, but I think that way, see, you can also, because this is APIM, right? Now you can do two two versions of the MCP server by doing two configurations of your MCP server, one like a less secure, one like a not less secure, one is like less privileged versus another higher privilege. But all those options are, all these like topologies can basically be created as part of separate layer, but the underlying framework of creating MCP server, and then that doesn't change. Okay, but you can obviously add another layer where the contact vetting will happen, whether the user appropriate permissions and all, or if it is a chatbot, then obviously you can just route it to a Dataverse MC. So all those options are also available.
Srini, I enabled your mic just in case you have a follow-up, or you're good.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, thanks for the question. Anyone else?
Shashank, this is Aro here. Just want to understand, right, to the people who are new to the MCP thing, because the MCP is slightly new for many people, right? So if you want to get some kind of the learning path or do anything which is they can actually get some step-by-step understanding how to get started with the Azure, the APIM or anything which is related to the MCP, how they can get started with that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. So see, MCP was created by Anthropic. They don't love C# or Dynamics, right?
Mm.
They are Python people. So I think everybody must have like a L300 level of Python understanding. No, if not 300, at least L200 level of Python understanding, because
Mhm.
that will give, and then everybody can code, right? You can use Cloud Code or whichever LLM you are using, and then you can create some fast MCP servers. But see, if you do it that way, and I'm very much sort of keeping this whole conversation towards the community who works on data, because all of us Dataverse people, right, they work with the enterprise customer. In enterprise, these hacking and joking doesn't work, right? I create a Flask MCP server and then I will do this with that. You need to really use the enterprise tool. So if you see, APIM is the enterprise tool, there is absolutely no doubt about that. Okay, this has been used for like Fortune 500, Fortune 50s, okay, and then it is scalable. So I think if you are in this domain where you have worked on previously on C#, Azure, and recently moved into Dynamics, I think using this, I think it's a very good option, because learning APIM is not about learning MCP server. It's like the overall API building, I will say, is what you learn. So I think, so start with that first. Okay, try to learn how do you build function apps, scalable function apps. Okay, the understand the consumption plans, premium plans, and what kind of capabilities they offer. How do you create like long running, like month, like running for months, like the apps which are running for months, versus ephemeral sort of endpoints which are like quickly active and then they send the response, and then they go dormant. So I think you start learning on all those bits first, and then gradually move on to, because I don't think you need to like learn the MCP protocol. I mean, it's good to learn, but I don't think you need to do that. As long as you learn how to build using Azure, I think that's a very good
Good.
thing.
Yeah, yeah. Something Swapnil have a question. Maybe I enable mic for you. Swapnil, you can just ask question in there now. I have allowed mic for you, Swapnil. You can ask
No, you can
question.
see. Yeah, yeah, you can
Oh,
see.
it's just enabled. Thank you very much. And Shashank, really appreciate. It is a very nice session and learned new thing today. I have a question. We do have function app created, which is secured by managed identity at an enterprise grade. And now we are building MCP out of it. So what is exactly the difference between creating or by directly using function uh, uh, API, which is exposed, and consume it within Copilot Studio instead of MCP server?
Well, see, if you build an MCP server, okay, see, MCP server, even though they are good, but they have a little bad name when it comes to context bloat. Okay, so if you, so let's say Dataverse MCP server. I'm pretty sure people have used Dataverse MCP
Yes,
server.
yes,
Now, if you see Dataverse MCP server does not give you an execute multiple tool. It gives you create, it gives you update, it gives you delete, blah, blah, blah. I don't fully remember all of that, but does not give
yeah.
you, it does not give you execute multiple. But I'm pretty sure if you have worked in Dataverse, have you done like, if I want to create contact, do you call, sorry, if you want to create 50 contact, do you call like the create endpoint 50 times? No. You create an execute multiple or a create multiple and then pass the payload at once and you get all the 50 responses. But that cannot be done with Dataverse, because if you do that with Dataverse Web API, Dataverse MCP server, it will call 50. It will make 50 calls for that create operation, and then you will keep waiting. So it is really important to learn to build new MCP servers which can do operations at scale, in alignment with how Dataverse works versus just using the out of the box, because out of the box lacks a lot of other features. You cannot do, like, one is this very critical one. Like, I don't remember any implementation where I've just called the create endpoint 50 times. That's not how it works, right? So that is a. Second thing is, if you want to, so let's say you have a function app endpoint, yeah, like you were saying, right? If you're in a Copilot Studio, how will you call it? Because until and unless you create, let's say, a custom connector, and then please don't forget that even if you create a custom connector, that's a separate dimension altogether. You need to still worry about the authentication and blah blah and all of that.
Um, sorry to interrupt you, Shashank, but calling it 50 times calling it 50 times can be handled using function app itself. We can code it over there, right? We can create a loop or any functionality where we can create it through
Right.
function app. And to call that function app, we do not have to use any custom connector. We can directly call Power Automate Flow as an action and
No, no,
call
but
or send an API request.
then that's
Sorry.
what you're saying. So see, when you do AI, you need to think the way AI works instead of going to the old deterministic way of writing about. Can I not call a function app from any client? Yes, of course I can. But can you create a prompt like this, which will end up calling a custom function app that you have built? I'm not very sure about that.
No.
That is where
Right.
the thinking has to change. Okay, that's why I keep like repeating in my talks also, that you need to think different. You cannot think on Power Automate and I will call an HTTP connector, because that is like 2022. You can still do that, but how about you interact with a company that only works on AWS, and they say that we no longer talk REST API, we only talk MCPs, And then the benefit of MCP is similar to how you had a REST API benefit, right? The Java client can also call REST. Similarly, any other LLM can also call any MCP server, regardless of whether you have written it in PowerShell. So it's not whether I can do this in the old way. Of course, you can do this in some way. Like sometimes I even like say that, okay, when you can do this in the old way, why are you be spending tokens? But that's if you ever have to, like if you decided that yes, I have to go the Copilot Studio route or the LLM route, then you need to probably think on those components which become LLM callable.
Okay, got it. And a follow-up question: does it add overhead? I mean, while creating MCP as a wrapper on function app, would it add overhead or any? Um, there are two things: token consumption and delay or performance issues. Because it adds another layer to reach out to the database or dataverse.
So the only extra layer that you see is the MCP server, like the APIM facade that we have put behind. But once the APIM forwards the call to the function app, it's going to be the same. So token consumption, of course, there's no doubt about it. There is a lot of token consumption that is going to happen, but you cannot avoid it. I mean, even if you make the LLM, let's say call what is that, agent flow, okay, that is also token consumption. So I don't think the downside of MCP server is in like using the like worrying about the token consumption, because I think across the API frameworks, I think it remains the same. The downside of the
Okay,
MCP, which I think coming to the fore, is like the context bloat. I mean, it will load the entire, like you saw my JSON, right? The LLM
right.
has all this JSON preloaded, whether it needs it or not, it will have. So that's where the things are changing. But I think other than that, that's the only layer additional.
Yeah. That was my next question, but I got it. Thank you very much. Anyways, it's improving. I mean, it's very new and very good technology to have MCP servers. Many organizations are now shifting their focus to create their own MCP servers. So that is good. Yeah. Thank you very much. That was a really great insight. Appreciate it.
Thanks much, Swapnil, for those questions. They were really intriguing, and thanks, Shashank, for addressing them brilliantly. It was always insightful to hear more around MCP server. So, any more questions, guys?
Yeah, we still have a few minutes,
3 minutes.
questions.
Yeah,
Yeah,
3 minutes
3 minutes
to go
left. Yeah. So if you have any
before.
further questions, you can ask Shashank directly. Because at the recording, you can't ask any questions,
Okay.
right? Very,
So
yeah.
there is one more, Aro, from
Yeah.
Satish. When you will decide to go with MCP server, considering lots of extra resources and cost overhead? That's in the chat.
Well, so yeah, so
That's from Sahil.
when you will decide to go with MCP server, considering lots of extra resources. See, I mean, we don't have to have a cynical view of the MCP server, because yes, a lot of resources, but that is not a direct result of an MCP server, right? If you have like API, let's keep MCP server out of the game. But if you have an APIM with an Azure front door, and then that APIM is protecting, let's say, an app service or function app, that those resources are anyways present. LLMs adds to the cost in terms of tokens and all, but that's a global concern, not something specific to a project. Okay, but to answer your question, when do you decide to write an MCP server? I think I will say you should have the, like, as a developer, right? As an architect or as a developer, you should have the skills to write an MCP server, but don't straight away jump into building an MCP server, because that depends on the consuming client. So Copilot Studio, for example, is very smart. It can, if you create an agent flow or an HTTP, like not HTTP, like a custom connector, and then add that as a tool, or rather all the tools which are available as an option in Copilot Studio, those are all LLM callable. Okay. So don't straight away jump into building an MCP server, but have this skill, at the back of your hand, because you never know when you might need it. But if you're using Copilot Studio as a client, I think I will say the start with the agent flows and the custom connectors, topics first, and then see, because see, one reason for MCP is that it is what was the word, interoperable or something like that, right? So even if a Java client can call your LLM if it is written as an MCP server, so that's the judgment that you have to use.
So
Right.
you mean that interoperability is the key, right? But when we when we decide the MCP, means of course, let's take a very simple example, right? We have to create a contact or account. I will definitely not choose to go with, because there are a ton of ways to do that, a bulk operations or a single operations. I will go with that. Considering that the cost is the key, right? I will not go with that. But we have to think about the certain parameters or checklist, when and why we have to create the MCP. Still, this is something I have to figure this out. But yeah, that I was just exploring this, right? And I didn't get concrete evidence for now, right? Why and when we have to. But still, it's a new skill. Definitely, we have been exploring this, right? And it's awesome, right? To know the things. But still, I would be very curious to know as an architect, right, when I will go with that. Because
Yeah.
even though the agentic AI, mode which we are switching right now, even Microsoft is also suggesting that when you will have 10 times efficiency or maybe more than 5 times efficiency while doing any automation in the traditional way, until then, don't decide to go with the agentic AI too, right? So of course, MCP has additional extra resources and cost implications. As an architect, we have to think, right, when we go with that.
So does MCP, Shashank, correct me if wrong, MCP by itself doesn't invite a cost, right? It's the
Yeah,
cost
it's
of the
just an
agent, right?
HTTP. Yeah, it's an HTTP over
Yeah.
SCC, HTTP with SSE basically. It's just the standardization
Right.
of the payload and the request and the response and the transport in the IO. That's what's been standardized by Anthropic. But I don't think. And then the other thing is that the LLMs, which are offered like the first class LLMs that we have, Claude and all, they have been trained heavily on the MCP protocol payload. So I think so that's why they understand MCP better, more than like any XRPC or JSON or XML communication. uh, and they have been trained to use MCP automatically. So that's how, when you import the description and definition, the LLM will automatically form the payload and make a call. You don't have to tell whether you have to use HTTPS or HTTP. As long as the endpoint is available, that can be done. So yeah, I think protocol doesn't attract additional cost.
Yeah, that is
Right.
a very, very nice question, and you greatly you answered very well, Shashank. Right? I think this is something which is we also learn from you also. These community events is just not for the audience; it's also from organizer. At times we have so much information we get from community, and then the speakers like you also enlighten us as well. Thanks for really sharing with that. Right. So, guys, if you have any questions, right, maybe. Shashank, you can share your LinkedIn profile or your email address if you want to, so that the people who are have more questions they can ask you at the later stage. Right? We have our next speaker already in
Absolutely.
the chat. Yeah. Thanks, Shashank, for your time. Really
All right.
appreciate. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you so
everyone.
much,
Thank
Shashank, for
you.
joining.
Bye. Take care.
Thanks everyone. I'm just start recording. Just give me